Australia has provided almost 400 million Australian dollars in military assistance, which is around 300 in the US dollars.
President Zelensky addressed that parliament. He asked for bushmasters. He got the bushmasters.
Hello and welcome to Ukraine in Flames, a special project by Ukraine Media Center and NGO Euroatlantic Course. My name is Anton Pachenkin, and today we will talk about how Australia helps Ukraine with weapons and diplomatic support. If you want to know more, please subscribe to our channel in order to stay tuned and support us with your likes and commentaries. We read attentively every one of them. Australia probably is the furthest country which actively supports Ukraine in our fight against the Russian aggression. In particular, Australia provided several dozen Bushmaster armored vehicles, other weapons and ammunition. Australia, together with New Zealand, are the only countries in the southern hemisphere to join the sanctions against Russia. Given its size, its strategic placement and its plentiful of resources, Australia is a worldwide important player. Though its national interests are concentrated in the Asia and Pacific region, Australia strongly supports Ukraine since the first day of the full-scale Russian invasion, on the same level as it did before. How significant and big is Australian aid to Ukraine? How wide is this support within the Australian society? And how occurred the first in the history visit of the Australian Prime Minister here to Kyiv? Welcome our first speaker, Vasyl Myroshnychenko, Ukrainian ambassador to Australia.
Hi, my name is Vasyl Myroshnychenko. I'm Ukraine's ambassador to Australia. I'm right now at the ABC studio getting ready for a big show. It's a big talk show tonight. But I was asked to share some of the information about Australian support to Ukraine. Since the outbreak of the war, Australia has been standing strong with Ukraine in solidarity, not only morally, but also materially. Australia has provided almost 400 million Australian dollars in military assistance, which is around 300 in the US dollars, and has been out there providing that on a regular basis. So far, we have received 60 Bushmasters, these armored personnel vehicles. 20 were delivered, another 40 have been committed. Also 28 armored personnel carriers M113. They are also on their way to Ukraine, so have already arrived. Australia has been very kind to procure anti-tank missiles for Ukraine, sending fighting drones, reconnaissance drones, also some decoys, and also artillery pieces, ammunition, as well as 777 artillery guns. That is massive, and Ukraine is extremely thankful to Australia for that support. A week ago, we had Prime Minister Anthony Albanese in Kyiv, and President Zelensky thanked him wholeheartedly for that support. It was a very symbolic and actually historic visit, first time in our bilateral relations when we had a Prime Minister of Australia coming. I had a chance to be there with Australian Prime Minister for 12 hours. And for me, as a wartime ambassador who just arrived in Australia at the end of March, that was a big reward to see that happening. So Australia is really punching above its weight, doing a great job in terms of military assistance, renegotiations and talking all the time. Many people here in Australia, both on the government and private level, are trying to find other ways how to support Ukraine in these darkest hours. But look, I continue my work, and I'm very thankful to Australian government, to Australian people for this support, and I look forward to engaging as much as possible. Thank you.
Now let's go for the voices from the voices of the Australian citizen. Our second guest is Stefan Romaniw, co-chair of Australia Federation of Ukrainian Organizations and vice president of the Ukrainian World Congress. Yes, he has Ukrainian ethnic origin, so Mr. Romaniw is obviously engaged, but thus he can better feel and explain the mood of the Australian society.
Thank you for taking such an interest in why Australia, the Australian government, and the Australian Ukrainian community are supporting Ukraine and doing so much to fight Russian aggression in Ukraine. Our community was built over 70 years. Our parents came after 1949, built a community. We're very, very strong in ensuring that we kept our Ukrainian identity. Our parents, pre-1991, fought for a free Ukraine. Went out on the streets and advocated for a free Ukraine. Today, there is a war. Today, this Australian Ukrainian community with the Australian government are standing with Ukraine. You've taken an interest into why. This is a war of values. We're now being contested. We want territorial integrity. We want democracy. We want sovereignty. All that is being challenged by Russia and Putin. The Australian government from day one has supported Ukraine. From day one, it has done sanctions against the Russian Federation. Since day one, it's provided humanitarian and military aid. Up until now, the Australian government has been one of the strongest supporters of Ukraine. And you might say 20,000 kilometres away. Why? Because our values are the same. Recently, the current Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, visited Ukraine. He met with President Zelensky. He expressed the support of the Australian people. The former Prime Minister Scott Morrison, also stood very strongly with Ukraine. So the Australian Parliament is standing with Ukraine. President Zelensky addressed that Parliament. He asked for Bushmasters. He got the Bushmasters. Prime Minister Albanese has offered another $100 million in military aid. He's offering more Bushmasters. We are supporting Ukraine.
Historically, there is a significant Ukrainian diaspora in Australia, despite the long distance from the historical motherland. Stefan Romaniw concludes his report with how Ukrainian civil organizations of Australia helped the refugees from the Russian invasion and how they advocated the Ukrainian needs and requests on the Green Continent.
The Australian Federation of Ukrainian Organisation, the peak body for Ukrainians here in Australia, has also been working very, very hard with the Ukrainian World Congress to support Ukraine. We have now offered over $6.5 million in humanitarian support, over 200 pallets of medical aid that we've sent to different parts of Ukraine through the Ukrainian Free University, in the Ukrainian Catholic University in Lviv. We have worked very, very hard with Caritas Ukraine and also with Rotary. We are building shelters in different parts of Ukraine. We have also provided other sorts of support. It's very, very important that you understand that the Ukrainian community in Australia is working very, very hard through the Ukraine Crisis Appeal to support Ukraine. Why? Again, because it's a war of values and we want to support Ukraine to overcome evil. We also see the Australian government in supporting displaced persons. We have over 8,000 visas that have been issued. 3,700 of our brothers and sisters from Ukraine, from war-torn Ukraine, are now in Australia. We're now supporting them. The Australian government is supporting them. We're working very, very closely to make sure that they are an integral part of this community. So be sure, the Australian Ukrainian community, the Australian government support Ukraine. At this point in time, the Australian Federation of Ukrainian Organisation will continue to advocate for more military aid from Australia to ensure that there is not Ukraine fatigue, to make sure that the media continues to show the atrocities in Ukraine. We're in this together. Be sure that the Australian Ukrainian community and the Australian government stand with Ukraine.
Mr. Romaniw ends his speech in his native language with very touching words. Please listen to it.
Слава Україні! Будьмо, молимося до Всевишнього, щоб Господь Бог допоміг нам закінчити цю війну і щоб Україна перемогла. Ні, не щоб перемогла, Україна переможе. Слава Україні!
You have been watching this special project by Ukraine Media Center and NGO Euroatlantic Course dedicated to the Russia-Ukraine war, Ukraine in Flames. In the description there is also information how personally you can help Ukraine in our fight for our freedom. And if you find our job interesting and useful, don't hesitate and subscribe to our channel and share this video. Thank you for watching, and everything will gonna be Ukraine.